Greetings, spiritual warriors. Welcome to class on spiritual warriorship based on books by His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami. And as you know, he has 6 spiritual warrior books, 6 reflection books, 4 beggar books, and there's the 2 leadership books. So he's given us quite a bit before he left his body in 2005. We've been doing these programs, as I think I recall telling you, it'll be 2 years in November. And I had to learn and grow through offering this. My main objective is to please the spiritual master and offer something that can help others to grow spiritually and get to know who they are, who God is, and their relationship. So I believe I have asked, and it says in Bhagavad Gita, you do your best and then you don't get overly concerned about the results. Because I think I've been trying to get some feedback and from any of you who've been with us for this period of time to possibly write to me if you don't want to come into the chat room. That being said, we return to the book we're discussing, Spiritual Warrior 4, Chapter 2, I believe. Yes. And the title is Choosing Love Over Fear. And I'm learning now I don't need to do a complete review of what we went over. Hopefully those who are interested to take notes or interested enough to purchase the book we're working on. And you can get it at Krishna.com or at the publisher's website, harinamapress.org. And there you get a view of all the books and excerpts and front cover, back cover, and the whole works. So I hope some of you have been interested enough to purchase the book so you could follow us or get more detail or on more subject matter. So this week we're going to continue with the section called Consequences of Fear. But if you were here last week or the week before when we covered the 3 types of fears, and we gave an exercise based on what he did at a seminar where he asked the students at that seminar to list their greatest fears from each of the 3 categories. Do you remember that? And we had Adhyatmika, fears created by one's own mind. I hope possibly those who were here and heard took time to work with that, because that's how we grow, that's how we find out what's going on. We have to work with ourselves and be honest with ourselves. And the second was to, again, list your greatest fears from Adhyatmika. Remember that? That is fears from the demigods and the environment, hurricanes, tornadoes, droughts, all those things. And the third was to list your greatest fears from Adhibhotika. And those are fears from interaction with other people and what we experience through the process of socialization. because that can be rough. There's many disappointments and disturbances. But what is your greatest fears? So I'm not asking for answers to these or if you did it, but I'm just reminding you that there was an exercise given, and prayerfully you took time to examine it, work with it, because Bhakti Tirtha Swami used to say at some of his classes, I'm not here to entertain you. I'm here to offer you something for your growth and definitely for my own. Okay, so let's hear what he has to say about the consequences of fear. And I'm sure if I asked each of you that question, each of you would have some answer to the consequences of fear. And he starts by saying that fear can sicken and weaken our bodies. It affects the adrenaline in the entire body because it is an aspect of the animalistic tendency to eat, sleep, mate, and defend. Now, when an animal is fearful, adrenaline causes changes in the body because it is preparing for what we use, fight or flight. Now, psychologists call this response the fight or flight syndrome, because the adrenaline causes the blood to clot in such a way that will enable the body to better contain the blood if a person or animal suffers from any wounds. Now, fear also causes our neurotransmitters to send messages that can cause the body's defenses to attack its own organs. Furthermore, living in the past hurts us because it means that we are again and we are really allowing, not again, we're allowing the unfortunate situation to attack us again and again. And we're minimizing our ability to fully live in the present. I'm sure many of you have in your studies and your readings, and I want to say New Age time, but here and now, in the now moment, in the present moment, and in reading these books, Bhakti Tirtha Swami continuously tells us to try to live in the present moment, because all the past can do bring back memories, and if you get attached to them, you're missing out on what's happening in that present moment and how you can grasp that moment, which then makes your future moment. So if you're living in a past experience and allowing it to attack you again and again in the present moment, what are you doing? You're carrying that to the next future moment. So that's a very important point. And only you can bring your attention to the present, here and now. What's going on here and now? He says that fear can prevent us from deeply loving another person. Although you may want to deeply love, that fear will present many blocks. You will not give yourself fully, and this will also prevent the other person from giving him or herself fully. How can people fully give themselves when this culture of fear bombards them consciously and unconsciously every single day? Considering these factors, it should not surprise us to see more and more relationships falling apart. These factors also contribute to the abuse of women and children and the elderly, because people constantly hear about such violence from so many sources. I remember one time in a class, Bhakti Tirtha, he gave statistics, and I'm sure we can find it, of how many violent scenes people watching TV see and hear and get bombarded with. And of course, they read it in the newspapers and listen to it on the news and watch such violence in the movie theaters. This culture of fear is bombarding them in many ways, and this is very dangerous. There's no shortage of demonic leaders who know the effects of such bombardedness and eagerly support the negativity in order to keep us divided and disempowered. He says that the government is currently warning us against terrorism and telling us to act cautiously in our daily lives. Although these attacks are a reality that is disturbing the nation, much of the fear is meant to create more of a negative world based on fear. When people become very fearful and animalistic, they can act in vicious ways. Furthermore, fear prevents us from connecting with other people on deeper levels, because we may resort to interpolation and speculation. In conjecturing about the needs of a person, it can consequently produce unsatisfactory or even harmful results. So in order to try to mitigate these fears, some people have taken to social activism. But in spite of their endeavors, they mainly just address the manifestations in the external world. They encourage a type of revolution that deals more with reformation than with real sense of transformation. Although they want to change the people, change the political strata, and change certain environmental problems, this type of change does not really surpass the mundane platform. Why? It does not focus on internal growth and nourishment. Again, if we've been following his books and his writings, he always brings us to the internal, because that's where change takes place in our consciousness. And that's where we have to go to make that change ourselves, based on seeing that all the externals we're doing is not bringing change or satisfaction. Now, other people may want to grow internally and will chant their prayers, engaged in their meditation, and access their divine intervention through channeling to address their own concerns. But they fail to consider the suffering of other people. Neither the social activists nor the selfish spiritualists are really engaged in acts of pure love and peace. You read that, I feel like going back to Spiritual Warrior 2, transforming lust into love. Because there he deals with love on so many levels. The problems are far beyond physical appearances and acts of spiritual selfishness. The problems have always related to the community and to the planet instead of only to the individual. People who try to engage solely in their own realization or in their own contact with God are not really mature spiritualists. The Supreme Lord himself surely does not act in this way. He constantly sends representatives and arranges for the presence of sadhus, sastra, and guru. Now, even though many people do not accept Krishna's help, he will make arrangements to try to assist as many people as possible. So if we're open and we're really endeavoring to bring change about, and we're hearing from, reading about the saints, sadhus, reading the sastras, scriptures, and following Guru's instructions, Krishna will make arrangements to assist as many people as possible. Now, a representative of God is one who acts according to God's will. The representative must also genuinely care for other people, but their endeavor to care will remain sentimental unless they spiritually rejuvenate themselves. People need to develop their internal essence and nourish their souls through their own sadhana or spiritual practices. People need to develop their internal essence. Who are you really? What is it? I always go back, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2. Krishna begins there spelling it out to Arjuna, who revealed for our understanding for ourselves what fear was, fearful of going on the battlefield and killing what he called his relatives and what would happen to the population. And Krishna there tells him, you don't know the difference. Call yourself intelligent. You don't know the difference between the spiritual and the material. And he begins spelling it out for him. Chapter 2, Bhagavad Gita, wonderful. So that's how you develop your internal essence. And that's how you nourish your soul. And your spiritual practices encourages more of that, increases that. He goes on, and people need to engage in contemplative and introspective activities while endeavoring to enliven themselves spiritually. Then they will be able to influence the environment. This world, our lives these days are so busy. So busy. But he's saying that we need to engage in contemplative and introspective activities while endeavoring to enliven themselves spiritually. And what will that do? That will reconnect you, us, we think, to our source, to Krishna, to the life force. And in that way we have the qualities, as you know, we all have the qualities of the Lord within us in minute amounts. But we begin to develop them and they begin to express. And that's how, as he's saying here, we can help others. But it says, what is that phrase? Physician, heal thyself. You can't help anyone unless you yourself are well. And he's given us techniques, technologies, and once more informing us, reminding us that we need to develop our internal essence and nourish our souls through our spiritual practices. So the spiritual has to be there no matter what, because that's what he's saying over here. Most of the material is reforming and wanting to reform. And that looks pretty practical, you know. Things look pretty bad, so we'll make this stand out, you know, what do they call it? Thousands of people marching and screaming, but it's to make a reform, but we need transformation, which begins within. So he says that we should not think that social activism and personal salvation alone are sufficient to make a difference. People need to move beyond their own isms, political involvements, cultural insights, and even their self-centered spiritual pursuits if they want to allow genuine spirituality to influence the environment. In order to accomplish this task, people must be able to recognize the elements of destruction and devastation, which includes fear. Sigmund Freud also recognized that people have two basic emotions or instinctive activities. For instance, although people instinctively have the tendency to destroy, devastate, annihilate, and even kill, they also have the tendency to consolidate and maintain. He could also understand that the negative tendencies are based on fear and the positive activities are based on love or the search for love. Bhakti-tirtha Swami tells us that in his book, Spiritual Warrior 2, I focus on transforming lust into love. In the scriptures, we recognize the existence of prema, or ultimate pure love of God, which manifests in different ways. When that love comes in touch with the material energy and the duality, it temporarily turns into lust. This means that the insatiable desire to satisfy lust in this material world is actually misdirected love. Our potential to love has gone in the wrong direction. One metaphysical system known as A Course in Miracles explains that there's only love and fear. Anything that interferes with love is negative and is only due to fear. Qualities such as lust, anger, envy, greed are all connected with fear. Now, as he wrote in Spiritual Warrior 2, and I know that book is, we went through a number of chapters in that book, so it's in the archives. And at a moment like this, I'm just sorry I didn't label those pictures, those programs. So if you're interested in what was in Spiritual Warrior 2, you'll have to go back and go through the regime, go through them. I don't remember. I think we have 70-something programs on now. Maybe one day somebody will help me label them. But he says that in Spiritual Warrior 2, he wrote that every negative action is a cry for love. And every positive action is a manifestation of love. Now, if we simply categorize a negative action as negative, we will lock ourselves into that duality and even reinforce it. Where is that? In his 4 principles for community building, one of them is if there's a problem or conflict, see it as my fault. And I remember mentioning that of the 4, that was the most difficult to apply. But when he commented on it, he said, it is our fault that we aren't loving enough to prevent the behavior that brought on the conflict, or loving enough to give love to the person that we're having the conflict with. So that love is very important, and it's really what our life is about. Because he tells us, if your beloved feels envious and you categorize it negatively, you will not be able to have a healthy resolution. However, if we see the person's envy as a cry for attention and affection, we will have the ability to deal with him or her in a positive way. Now again, we have to use our intelligence. This doesn't mean that you let somebody put you down or abuse you, and you say, oh, this is a cry for love, I'll let them abuse me more, and this will show my love. No. This is, in certain behaviors, you recognize that behavior or what is going on as a cry for love, and then you can move forward from there. Now, your own words and actions may have caused your beloved to feel unloved, which then turned to envy or jealousy. So again, we have to go internal, prospectively, and check ourselves of what did I do, what did I say, how did I say it, what did I mean when I said it. You see what I'm saying? 'Cause we are still a part of the proper right action. When someone expresses anger, we can simply label it as anger, or we can see it as a cry for love, or as an expression of fear. Try to see how many things seemingly negative emotions are cries for love. Try to find ways to bring out this love. So once more, he's helping us realize that we have to be responsible. We have to be mindful of what's going on inside of us and caring enough for others to be more mindful of what may be affecting them and what they're crying out for. He says, for instance, we can simply label these terrorists as demons. But if we look closer at some of their biographies, we will also discover their own cries for love. In one case, the father of one of the terrorists would often call his son a sissy. His father wanted him to become a doctor, but he could not reach this goal. He grew up feeling useless, with no sense of value. Therefore, he must have constantly felt hungry for a sense of identity and a sense of accomplishment. And you notice that even today, sometimes parents fussing, screaming at their kids, hey, you're stupid, you're so stupid. What they're planting in that child's consciousness is really not a loving thing or action. When some of these people hear, back to the so-called terrorists, that they can immediately attain paradise by dying in a religious war, they eagerly embrace this philosophy, since their lives are already so full of suffering. Such a negative upbringing practically acts as a breeding ground for this type of fanatical mentality. And you say there's a reason for everything. Okay, how much time? We still have time. He's gonna, I think this is a story, The Evil Dog and the Good Dog. I would like to conclude, he says, this section with a Native American's parable. Certain Native Americans in tribes understand that there is an evil dog and a good dog within each person who continuously fight. The dog we feed the most will win. This same phenomena goes on in our own lives because we will have a lower nature. We have a lower nature and a higher nature. We will have the choice to fear and to remain in a combative mindset, by viewing others as the adversaries. We have the choice, to remain in a negative mindset by struggling to fulfill our desires because we fear that if we do not make our own arrangements, no one else will help, not even God. Conversely, we have the choice to engage in proper action instead of just worrying or justifying our lack of action. We have the choice to look deeper into the problems on this planet instead of just trying to change them through social activism, which only alters the externals. We also do not want to fall into the category of selfish spiritualists who only concern ourselves with our own salvation. We want to engage in a total revolution, which is ultimately an internal revolution that then manifests in the environment in a healthy way. I just thought and remembered what they said, what Prabhupada said, that what his books will change society or change the world in how many years? Something like that, Prabhupada said.
It's 10,000 years.
10,000 years. And what did he mean? What's in his books is for changing internally. And as you change internally for knowing, again, back to who you are, your relationship with God, then your actions will be God-like, and you can help others, and the more people you help, the environment changes, and they will learn and pass that on. And of course that includes chanting the holy name. Prabhupada constantly in his purports, as you read his books, reminds us to chant. When we realize that we can simply fall into the loving embrace of the Lord, we can avoid fear on all levels. By acting in the proper way, we will receive the best results because the Supreme Lord is not unfair. If we act properly in spite of circumstances, we will receive reciprocation from the Lord, because as we surrender to the Lord, He will reward and support us accordingly. Remember Bhagavad Gita 4:11? As he states, as all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects. So we readily avoid the sinful activity and embrace the proper action, knowing that the indwelling presence of the Lord in the heart will accommodate the proper action. As we have more faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, our level of fear will naturally decrease. And that level of faith, as we have more, it comes from realizing that by acting in the proper way, we will receive the best results because the Lord is not unfair. Now, we're coming close. Is there anybody in the chat room tonight?
Carol.
Carol? Just Carol? Hattie Bo, Carol. Welcome. How are you? I hope you're doing well. Anything I've said so far gotten your attention or interest you?
She made a comment. I used to work as an activist. I stopped that work during the first year I was at the temple when I was taught that was not the way to bring true change, true good, which can come by becoming Krishna conscious.
Okay. So what I've been addressing, what he's been addressing and I'm presenting to you makes sense, right? It has to go deeper. Cause some activity, social change, to be making enough noise. On the surface, it looks like change is taking place, or the official may pass a law or something. But the change doesn't hold, because it's temporary, it's surface, and that's why. But we first, as he said, we have to do the internal work and have ourselves calm. So I think I'll end there. Thank you, Carol, for being there. Thank you for your comment, and I hope your Krishna consciousness is becoming more Krishna conscious, and that what you're getting here is helping you to grow, and what your activities in the temple or your spiritual activities are helping you to grow stronger. And prayerfully, you're also chanting the holy name and studying. Did you have any of the spiritual warrior books, by the way?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Try, Carol, to
Oh, she said, I have a book of Maharajas on japa.
on japa. Oh, Bhakti Tirtha Swami book.
Yeah, His Holiness BTS on japa.
Okay. What's the title of the book, dear?
Volume 3, Harinam Chintamani, Reflections on Sacred Teaching.
Okay, Harinam Chintamani, great. That'll take you deeper, that's for sure. I hope you're reading it. Okay, Carol, thank you for being there. Have a blessed week. We'll finish this chapter next week, and we'll look for a new adventure after that. So thank you, and keep chanting and keeping up your spiritual practices. Hare Krishna.